Okay, this is Charlie Van Derven, Social Advisors Podcast, recording number 2 with Brian George, founder of Charitable Planning Network. Brian George, my friend, I couldn't be more than excited to have you as a guest on our podcast today. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Everyone, I am joined today by one of my favorite people. Brian George has been a friend of mine for a couple of years, and full disclosure, a client of ours at Social Advisors as well. We've watched Brian work through a process with independent broker-dealer, and now he's opened his own RIA. I should say started his own RIA. Founded is a better word. And so in the spirit of the podcast, in bringing leadership experience to maybe a younger generation of advisors who are in that wirehouse world, thinking about the independent world and what that looks like. I thought, Brian, you'd be an absolute perfect guest for our podcast because, man, you've been through it, right? Starting with the wirehouses into an independent space, now starting your own RIA. Anyway, Brian George, welcome. And again, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I am glad to be here. We've had some interesting conversations over the years, so why not continue?
Yeah, well, you got a lot of wisdom, Brian. I'm just excited to leverage that and bring it to an audience so that they can grow from your experiences. Why should everybody have to have the same hardships? And I'm sure in our the next 45 minutes or so of our conversation, there's going to be a lot of dimes of wisdom dropped that maybe a younger generation. I don't mean that by age, of course, but a lot of people second, third career. People can grow from your experiences. So maybe we start off there, Brian. I think first, I want to say I saw your post on LinkedIn today, and it embodies exactly who you are. Now I'm going to paraphrase. For a great picture of you playing bass, by the way. How long you been playing bass guitar?
I guess at this point, probably 50 years.
Well, that doesn't age you at all, does it?
A little bit.
a little bit. But the post, to bring our audience up to speed, the post, Brian, was about how, you've been through a lot of roles in your life, starting with the Navy. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that and, through the different roles in financial services as well. Your post mentions that for the second time in your life, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Talk about that a little bit. That's so powerful, Brian. Talk about that a little bit.
So I think we're all here to support each other. Right?
Love it.
And when I shut down my IT consulting business in 2008, I sold part of it. I shut part of it down because I wasn't happy doing it anymore. I wanted to do something that I knew I would wake up every day happy to go to work.
Beautiful.
Right. And some people said, but you're a financial advisor now. How does that make you happy? Well, I get to help people solve their problems.
Yeah.
I get to help people retire comfortably, get to help people put their kids through college. I get to add some certainty to something that a lot of people are scared to even talk about.
Yeah. You touch on a really important point there. Right. So many people are even afraid to open that book. Right. So many people are afraid. And, of course, we all know the stories of people who look like they've got tremendous affluence, but are leveraged to the hilt, and one thing goes wrong and bankruptcy sets in or whatever that is. And I don't think that's maybe the norm. So, Brian, why do you think, American society being what it is, and we're consumer driven, right? But why do you think people are so afraid to talk about their finances?
I think a lot of it stems from never having talked about it growing up. I mean, it was never part of the conversation when I grew up.
I agree. I mean, in fact, it was almost taboo. It was almost on the opposite end. It wasn't just not part of the conversation. It wasn't supposed to be part of the conversation. As a business owner, I read more and more articles that say employees should talk about how they're compensated. And that, if you go back, I mean, when I got my first jobs, I'll be 50 this year, so I date myself a little bit with that. When I got my first professional jobs after college, I want to say I was told not to share information about my comp package. I can't say that directly. I can't, not that I have that specific memory, but I have the feeling that I was told, well, this is between you and the employer, and this isn't discussed. So I think we've got a lot of socially, I think we've got a lot of unraveling to do, maybe around that personal financial conversation.
Yeah, it was never supposed to be discussed. It was sometimes discussed, but it wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah.
You're making what, and I have some stories around pay, but we'll have to save that for another conversation.
We got time.
Well,
we got time.
I left 2 jobs because, well, the first one, I retired from the Navy. I had a goal, right? That, and I've been electronics technician and worked on alarms and warning systems and gyro systems, but I trained myself to be a computer programmer for 2 years before I got out. So I wanted a job as a programmer.
Cool.
So it wasn't my profession. It was kind of a collateral duty. And the first job I got, my goal was to get paid enough or I didn't have to touch my retirement check, where I could just bank that.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
and I got a job offer. I got an offer letter like 4 months before I was even able to retire, which was great. And it met my minimum number. And 6 months into it, because I said, I'm going to give this a year, see if I like it, right?
Yeah.
6 months into it, the important tasks or the ones that were time sensitive, they gave them to me. Right? So when it came time for my review, like 2 days before my review, I got a call from another agency and said, a friend of mine who I used to work with said, my boss wants to talk to you about a job. Can you come over for an interview?
Well, timely.
Okay.
Right before your review. Yeah.
So I go over there, we talk for like half hour. We're talking about all the sports teams in Seattle. We haven't talked about business yet.
Yeah.
So my thought goes 2 ways. Either I have this job, I'm a lock, and they just, the boss just wants to see if he can get along with me.
Right.
Or they needed to interview so many people and I'm just cannon fodder. All right.
Gotcha.
One of those
Yeah.
two. And as I'm thinking this, he says, we want to hire you. We want to pay you this much. And that much was 50% more than I was currently making.
Well, how'd that review go?
So I had so I had the review the next day, and I'm open and honest. I told my boss, I'm going on this job interview, and so her boss comes over to do the annual review. Well, you're one of our studs. You're a great guy. We're gonna give you a 5% raise.
Yeah.
So I heard you went on an interview. How's that compare? It doesn't compare at all, right? And this was on a Friday. He said, well, what do you tell him? I said, I told him I'd tell him on Monday. I need to discuss it with my wife because it was going to impact my schedule,
right,
which would impact her schedule. We're dropping our son off every morning. And he said, well, can I talk to you on Monday before, you talk to them? Sure. I didn't give him a specific time.
Yeah.
So Monday comes. He says, well, we can give you 35% raise.
Okay.
And I said, you would think I'm happy to hear that, but I'm not. I'm actually angry because you lowballed me because you thought you could.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you had offered me 15, 20% before, I would have never gone on that interview because I like what I do here.
Yeah.
However, this tells me that when you have an opportunity to take care of me, you're not going to, and I can't trust you. So I got to take the other job.
Was it ultimately, I mean, you're leaving an established role, you go into a new company. There's a lot of unknowns in doing that. Was it the right decision?
It was, because where I was kind of pigeonholed.
Okay.
You have to do this. And
Yep.
where I went, first day on the job, they said, do you know cold fusion? I said, no. Okay, we got a project you got to do in cold fusion. Well, I don't know cold fusion. Is there a deadline? Oh, no, you just got to, be proficient by the end of the year. Okay, That's cool then. So the things I was able to do expanded. I got better pay. We had a kid coming, and they let me work remotely.
Wonderful.
I had to go over once a week for staff meetings, but other than that, I work from home with
Good.
new baby.
Good.
So yeah, it worked out great until everybody left except me. And they wanted me to take over as the director of the IT department.
Okay.
And I said, okay, I can do it, but I want the same pay that Ron was getting. And they said, well, we can only give you a 5% bump in pay. And I laughed, right? Because there's that 5% number again. Right?
Yep.
And I said, you're right. The regulations say you can only give a person a 5% increase. I said, this is a county job. I said, however,
Okay.
there are some contracts that you have, these contracted employees, the 3-year contracts, where you can pay the people anything you want.
Yeah.
For the length of that contract. And because I manage the payroll system for you, I happen to know that you have 3 of those positions that aren't filled right now.
A little bit of intelligence goes a long way, huh?
So you could pay me that if you really wanted to. Well, we're not going to. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Brian, the post this morning and our conversation, several conversations, but last week in prepping for our conversation today, you said you were in the right place. And you mentioned to me in our conversation last week that it was the second time in your life you found yourself in the right place. Do you remember what you told me was the first time?
Oh yeah, it's easy to remember.
Yeah.
I for 2 hours a day, I was a jazz DJ.
I love this.
And I got to play music.
Yeah. Man, how cool is that?
And get complaint from the producer because you should talk more. Oh, this is a jazz show. People don't dial in to listen to me blather on.
Yeah. Yeah.
They dial in and listen to the music.
It sounded like that was during your Navy career.
Yes.
Awesome, man. So, Brian, question for you. We're going to bring this back to financial services, I promise, right? So you've got one of the things that make you a great guest for this show is you've got a lot of time prior to joining the industry. What did you bring from those experiences in the Navy, right? And you were a key person in your role in the Navy. You explained that you wanted to go on R&R and you couldn't even do that because they couldn't replace your skill set, right? But key role in the Navy, your IT profession as an IT employee, and then your own consultancy. Did you always know you were going to financial services? Let's answer that question first. Did you always know financial services was in your future, or was that kind of happenstance?
I had no clue.
Okay.
This is my 3rd career.
Yeah.
Right? However, when I was still a computer geek, one of the systems I worked on were financial systems for the Navy.
Cool.
I also was a Navy relief counselor, teaching young knuckleheads like I used to be how to budget and manage your money.
Wonderful.
Which kind of morphed into, mutual funds and, bonds and then stocks. And so it was kind of this gradual increase in what I was talking to people about. So I had an incident that happened, and I woke up the next day and I said, I hate my job. And the next thought was, that's terrible because I own the company. Now what do I do? I actually use stronger words than that, but
yeah, I bet
we'll keep it PG. Right? So I thought I can't keep doing this if I hate my job.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not any fun anymore, right? So I was kind of wondering, what am I going to do? And my neighbor had at that point worked for Edward Jones for about 12 years.
Okay.
And he said, you know about this inside and outside, so you should check it out. Right?
Cool.
So I spent a couple of months checking out Jones.
Cool.
And decided that would meet my requirements. I could solve people's problems. do a good job, get paid well for it. That was it. So that's how I got in the industry.
I love that.
2008.
Wow. Interesting time to make that transition happen too, huh?
It was great.
Yeah.
You know why it was great?
No.
and I mean, you know that Jones, they have you going out knocking on doors.
Well, absolutely. I was going to ask you about that experience.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
So my first door knock, literally my first door knock. Hi, I'm Brian. I'm opening up a new business in the area. I'm out introducing myself to my neighbors. Right.
Yeah. Love it.
And he said, you know what? Sure, I'll talk to you. That SOB that I have now only calls me when he wants me to buy or sell something. And now he won't return my calls. So I'm happy to talk to you.
Yeah. Brian,
And
timing.
I thought, wow, this is great. Right. So
yeah. All of them are going to be this good, right? All those door knocks are going to go just like this first one.
Not quite. However,
Well, and off script a little bit, right? Because you and I prepped some questions getting ready for today's conversation. So we're going off script a little bit, but I'll tell you, timing, needs and timing come into every decision you make, purchasing decision. I don't care if it's consumer goods. I don't care if it's, groceries in the cupboards. I don't care if it's financial services, right? If you have a need and the timing is right, that's when purchasing decisions are made. And, 2008, 2009. And listen, I owned a home at that time. It was, we watch our net worth plummet just like everybody else did. Those advisors who, are scared of their own shadow during those moments, and we're going through one of those again with inflation climbing and the market turmoil that we're going through right now. We've been on a 12 or 13 year ride where the market's been on the right trajectory for a long time now. And finally, we've got something of a correction happening. This is a good time for good prospecting advisors as well.
Yes. What I learned in 2008 and early 2009 was people know that we don't control the market.
Yeah.
They know that, right?
Yeah.
What they will not forgive you for is if you stop talking to them.
Yes, that's right.
As long as you're staying in communication with them, and explaining, we're still on the right track.
Yeah.
And unless priorities have changed and the goals have changed, we'll be fine.
Yeah, that's a wonderful lesson, right? I mean, it really is about the relationship and about the communication, even in difficult times.
Especially in difficult times.
Great point. Especially in difficult times. Absolutely right. Absolutely. So it sounds like, Brian, that Navy experience, owning your own business, a lot of, the foundational financial knowledge you have as a business owner, and the help you were providing when you were part of the Navy, sounds like those really prepared you for that, jumping off and knocking on those doors with Jones.
So the biggest lesson from the Navy by far was sometimes you're in a situation where failure is not an option. You just have to figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Love that. It's not. And I've been in some of those situations where figure it out.
Yeah.
Come back when you have an answer. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well,
and then I was a Navy recruiter for a while.
Okay.
And I learned that during the training, someone said, you're selling a dream. You're not even giving someone something they can take away besides a contract that they just signed. And I decided that I like talking to people. It was a great job for me. I get to talk to new people every day. I had a government car that I could drive wherever I wanted to. Had a government credit card to fill up with gas. I got to meet new people every single day. It was great.
Cool.
And I made it fun. I would walk up to gorgeous women and they would say, no, I don't want to go in the Navy. I said, no, I don't want to put you in the Navy. I said, but what I do want to know is, do you have any old boyfriends that won't leave you alone? And they would laugh, right? Well, give me their name and number and, maybe I can get rid of them for you. Right? And I would do the same thing with little old ladies. You got any grandsons or granddaughters that just won't do right? Just give me their name and number. Maybe I can put them to work for you, right?
Yeah, I love it.
And I actually put people in the Navy that way.
Yeah.
Not a lot, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
over 3 years, I put a handful of people in that
I
way,
love that, man. That's
and
fun.
and it was always fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. All right. So you go through those early career experiences. You land with Jones, you cut your teeth with door knocking. And Brian, I mean, wow, that's kind of maybe it's part of the weeding out process. I don't know. That's a tough thing, right? Building up the gumption to go knock on that first door. I can't even imagine what that experience is like.
I love knocking on doors.
Cool.
I
Cool.
used to, they had me take new advisors out and train them how to knock on doors because I enjoyed it a lot. I was good at it.
Yeah.
It was also one of the reasons I had to leave because I got injured a few times in the Navy. And after years of being out knocking on doors,
Yeah.
I was taking Percocets every day.
Uh-huh.
And I decided I can't continue to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So that turns into time with JP Morgan, right? And then Wells Fargo Advisors.
yes,
But when you and I met, you were part of an independent broker dealer, World Equity Group.
correct.
So what did you, when you were working with Jones and Wells and JP Morgan, did you always know you wanted, listen, I know you well enough to know you're an independent spirit already, but was that in your mindset? I'm working for these large firms right now. I really want more control over,
It really wasn't. I
Okay.
mean, I got spoiled at Jones. I really did.
Yeah.
But for physical reasons, and I kind of outgrew them.
Okay.
Um, JP Morgan Chase was fine, but there came a point I was working on some fairly large insurance deals with a group of surgeons at a hospital in the regional hospital in the area. And then they said, you can't do insurance. We're not doing insurance anymore or long-term care.
Gotcha.
So then I said, well, I got to do something else now. Right. So I wound up with Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
And without getting into the gory details, after 3.5 years of Wells Fargo, someone decided to enforce a policy that had been in place for years, but they never enforced it before.
Okay.
But they only wanted to enforce it with me.
Aha.
And I questioned that.
Well,
not surprising to you. You know me pretty well, right?
I do. Yeah.
So that was kind of the beginning and the end at Wells Fargo, and I decided instead of going to another big bank or big wirehouse, I would go to an independent, and I almost started my own RIA then.
Yeah.
But
so
I probably would have screwed it up at that
Aha.
point.
Aha.
Probably would have screwed it up. So two years at World Equity Group.
Okay.
Prepare because everything was pretty much on me anyway.
Yeah.
So that got me ready for it. And then the always asking the what if, what if we tried this? I have this client and this is the perfect situation for this client. I want to do this. Is this okay? Right. Well, no, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, why not? So what if is often followed by why not? If I get the negative answer, right? And
yeah.
The answer was less than satisfactory. And I wound up being able to do it, what I wanted to do, but what should have taken a half-hour conversation took 2 months
Yeah.
to run up the chain, right?
Yeah.
And get an exception to policy. And I thought this is crazy.
Yeah, you're no longer nimble. It's very difficult to act as a fiduciary when you're dealing with, with that bureaucratic chain of command.
So now when I want to complain about the idiot management, I just look in the mirror. and there he is.
Yeah, they take your complaint notes. Yeah, thank you. We'll put that in the comment box. Thank you.
Yes.
I want to ask you, so that experience with the large firms, right? The Jones and the JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo. Understanding your departure, understanding why you made that departure to World Equity Group. Is there anything that you can impart upon our listening audience or viewing, because we're recording the video also, things that you did well or maybe didn't do so well in the months and perhaps even year leading up to your departure that, the recommendations you can make. Someone who's sitting in Morgan Stanley today and they're like, you know what, I really want to be an independent advisor, whether that's independent broker dealer or going all the way to RIA. What kind of advice would you give them in the last 6 and 12 months of their time at a Morgan or a Merrill or a Wells or one of those large firms?
So I would say give it serious thought,
Okay.
because it is a big move.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm fairly certain I would have screwed it up had I done it too early.
Yeah.
So I spent the first 6 months of 2021 deciding whether I was going to go to another independent firm,
Sure.
or if I was going to start my own RIA. And I went over all the pros and cons. And in June, I figured out I'm going to do my own thing.
Okay.
I'm going to jump off a cliff. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
scary.
so from June to December, and the company was registered and established June 13th. I'm sorry, December 13th.
Cool.
So between June and December, all that time was spent figuring out how to make sure that I had all the tools in place to not only continue doing what I was doing, but to be able to expand the products and services I could offer for my clients. Because if the goal is to always put them in a better position, that means I have to educate myself on new regulations, on new products and services that come out, and figure out if they're appropriate.
Yep.
Right. And that they're legal, ethical, moral, all that stuff. So I spent a great deal of time forming strategic partnerships.
Good.
To make sure that all those things, that I could do all those things I needed to do. One of which was already formed was with social advisors. So
yeah, thank you, man. Little plug for us there, and we appreciate the heck out of you. I'm going to rewind a little bit because I want to dig in a little bit more to that departure from Wells Fargo Advisors. What did that look like from a Wells perspective? And I'm not trying to call out a certain firm at all, but what I want to do is I want to position, you make that departure. Of course, you've got a non-solicitation, I'm sure, right? I mean, that's pretty standard. How did Wells react when you made that move?
Actually leaving Wells was pretty easy, because when I hired on, any clients that I brought in were considered to be my clients. So, and when I left, I could contact them and ask them to come with me.
Wonderful.
If I got referrals from the bank, they didn't want me to touch any of those people.
Gotcha. Okay.
However, they could come with me, if I could let them know I'm leaving, right? And if they wanted to come with me, they could. So it was Jones and JP Morgan don't talk to anybody.
Yeah, that's a different, right. Different scenario.
The arrangement with Wells was different.
Okay. Were you I thought you were on the Wells Fargo Advisors side. Were you on the finance side?
No, I was on Wells Fargo Advisors, but I was on the banks. I was on the bank side.
Okay. So, and the cautionary tale there is, right now you had a much easier transition out of that large firm.
Mm-hmm.
I bring that up because most people that have gone through that transition go, wow, I didn't know the lawyers were coming after me. Right. And so credit to Wells for that not being the case. But my recommendation, having watched a lot of advisors make this transition, make sure you know what's in that non-solicitation agreement.
Yes.
That's
very important, because they will come after you.
Yeah, make that. And the other thing that I like to tell advisors who are thinking about making that leap is don't make that leap for at least 6 months, because now's the time that you have 6 months to make sure that your relationships are in the right place, so that those people, when you move, you don't have to solicit them to move with you, or after your 1 year non-solicitation, you're still going to have strength of relationship to bring them over.
Yep.
So those are a couple pieces of advice I like to give for advisors that are getting ready to make that jump. You mentioned the proverbial cliff. I did it 9 years ago myself. October will be 9 years for social advisors. Threw away the paycheck. Started to rely on myself for creating that for that for my family and myself and the people in my care, our team. That's a scary leap, Brian.
It was.
Yeah. How'd you overcome that fear?
I think all the prep work I did was helpful, and I had a long range plan that I put in place, and I had faith in the plan, and I had faith in me to be able to execute the plan.
Yeah.
And I mean, consists of three things that have always helped in my success: patience, persistence, and hard work.
Yeah. Love
Mostly patience.
That's important. That's important to note. Nothing happens as fast as you want it to, right?
No. And I think I told you I was in a networking group, and I know that in my business, people don't like shake your hand and meet you one time and then turn over their kids' inheritance to you.
Right.
They really have to know, like, and trust you, which
Right.
I've heard you say a number of times.
Yep.
So I joined this networking group, and the plan was the first year I wasn't even going to break even with the dues and the registration fee and all that. Second year, I would cover the first 2 years, and the third year I would cover the first 3 years and the next 7 years.
Yeah.
Because people in my group would start refer me their own business. Yeah. And then once that happened, they'd start referring me their friends and colleagues and, maybe family.
Yeah.
And it worked out exactly the way I had planned it to work. I would not have been unhappy had it worked quicker.
Sure. Yeah.
But the fact that I didn't break even the first year wasn't a disappointment, because it was expected. It was baked into the cake.
Yeah.
And that's where the patience comes in. So,
And being 9 years into this, first off, I can't believe it's been 9 years. I enjoy it today like I did in day one. A little less scared today than I was in day one. We had a small savings account, and I departed the firm I was working with and asked my wife for permission to get this thing off the ground. I thought it would work, and give me 60 days, enough money to cover 60 days before I'd have to go find another job. And thank goodness it worked out. But even 9 years later, I look at that journey. It's gone by very, very quickly. But in the beginning, I thought it would happen so much more quickly than it did. I really thought 4 or 5 years in, we'd be hitting a lot of metrics we're hitting now. So
I'm a little older than you, so I figured that out sooner. So
yeah, well, yeah, maybe I suppose that's maybe that's a luxury of experience and wisdom.
And my wife's hard line was, don't jeopardize the house.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was even back in the IT consultancy days.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't jeopardize the house and we'll be fine. Okay. Yeah. If that's the line in the sand,
that's great.
I'll never do that. Right.
As long as I know the rules, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Brian, I want to talk about Charitable Planning Network, because you've got a unique practice on your hands. I shouldn't even say practice. That doesn't give you the credit you deserve. You've got a unique business on your hands, right? So tell me a little bit about the mission of Charitable Planning Network, and then I want to talk a little bit about values involved with that as well.
Okay, so I don't know any nonprofits that have enough money.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe some of the large ones, maybe they have enough money, but I don't really know that. Right.
Yeah.
All the nonprofits that I've met and work with, none of them have enough money. And they all need more to fulfill their mission. Right? So I found out creative ways to help them get more. And in the process, I found out creative ways for my clients to give more. So if you could give more and have no negative impact on what you wanted to leave your family, the legacy you want to leave your family, if you could do both, most people would say, sure, let's do that.
Yeah.
All right. So it makes me happy, all right, to be able to do this kind of work, because everybody wins. The charity wins, the donor wins. I win because if an organization gets, an extra money because of a conversation that I had, to me, it feels like I just wrote them a check.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I get, like I said, I get a lot of personal and professional satisfaction from doing this kind of work. The only one that might take offense is the IRS, but I don't really know anyone that cares if they're mad or not. So,
Hey, if, as long as you're working within the confines of the rules they set,
yes.
you
And,
know,
and some of these strategies have been around for 40, 50 years. They're not new,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of good things, not only for organizations, but also, to your point, the legacy. And I'll share with you, I'm 49, I'll turn 50 in September. And that's a milestone event. I thank you for that. I got a little golf clap. If all you're doing is listening to us, I got a little golf clap for that. I don't know, surviving this long maybe is what that golf clap was about. Not that I feel old necessarily. Some mornings certainly I do, but more and more, my mind goes towards legacy. And I think, I feel like I'm a good dad. I don't do any harm to my family. I provide for them. I think that I've got my legacy is pretty solid with my immediate family, but I think all the time, what's the impact? What's the larger impact I'm making? Right. We donate to a couple charitable causes. I live near the ocean. I love to, surf and paddleboard. So we donate for beach cleanup and the health of our oceans and legislation to protect that. But I think all the time, Brian, honestly, not, close to 50, maybe I've got 30, 35 years ahead of me. I'm not sure. No one is. But I think often outside of my immediate impact on my family, what am I providing? What am I leaving? And so, yeah, even just from that personal perspective, what you do, I find to be a huge differentiator within the industry and of great importance for people as they, add years to their life.
So the question I would ask you or
Yeah.
someone in your situation is,
Yeah.
because you're already charitably minded, you have some things that are important to you, right?
Yep.
What if you could leave more to charity and more for your family at the same time?
Yeah.
Would
Right.
that be worth a conversation?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? I mean, that legacy, that impact. Yeah, I mean, people don't remember you, maybe even 2 generations, unless you're a really exceptional person, right? Are you left hills and hills of money that carried through generations, but the memory of you after you're gone is only 2 or 3 generations long.
Yes, and
unless you've had a crazy impact somewhere.
yes. So when you ask people what's important to them,
yeah,
it's never, well, I shouldn't say never, because I don't know everyone in the world. I've never come across someone who said it's the money, right? It's not the money.
Yeah.
It's the family farm that they want to pass on to their kids.
Yeah.
It's that heirloom that great grandmother or grandfather has passed along that they want to continue to pass along. It's the business, that they've built from scratch and now they want to pass it on to their kids. Those are the important things.
Yeah.
And there are ways to make sure that does get passed along.
Yeah.
And doesn't disappear by, the second generation.
That's cool.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So Brian, here's one of the unique things. I like to bring this up in all of our conversations here. And you and I've talked about this in the past a little bit. Here's one of the many unique things about the industry we're in. A financial advisor gets started in this industry. If they're not inheriting a book, right, they're a survivor for the first few years at a minimum, right? But then AUM grows a little bit. They hire an assistant. AUM grows a little bit more. Now we need a junior advisor to handle some of those smaller clients so I can focus on the larger. Those skills as a good advisor and, a good producer are not necessarily the same skills as a good leader. But as that business grows, right, as you grow partners, as you grow people working for you, there's almost a mindset of a CEO, more of a leadership type role than that producer as an advisor. And we don't have to just talk about financial services, but through your time at the Navy, through your IT consultancy, heck, through your jazz DJ time, right? And then furthermore into your growth through Jones and JP Morgan Chase and Wells and and through your independent roles with World Equity Group and now Charitable Planning Network. What have you learned as you're, I know you're doing a little bit of recruiting and looking for advisors to work with. What have you learned that helps you be a better leader today?
So it started in the Navy. And I wrote about this before, where I was, I thought I was a pretty good leader, right? And when I first got my opportunity to be a leader of men, as the quote says.
Yeah.
The difference was I had a pretty high security clearance. It was the super burn eyes before reading type security clearance. It was that high. And the people I worked with and that worked for me, they also had that security clearance. And you couldn't screw up, because even the hint of screwing up, you lose it.
Yeah, sure.
And all the perks that came with it. So it's really easy to be a good boss when everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So I look wonderful, right? And then I switched jobs to get more into electronic maintenance instead of Intel. And then I had a lot of what I affectionately call the misfits and malcontents who weren't always doing what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So now I have to actually supervise them and guide them and all that. And it took me 2 years actually, before I figured out what I was doing wrong. Because I took, what people told me and it didn't work for me. And one day I realized I should just treat people the way I want to be treated.
Simple, right?
Very simple, right? Took me 2 years though, because I was trying to do what other people were doing, and they were successful. But I learned that, there's two ways: persuasion and coercion. Persuasion will get you a whole lot more out of people than coercion will.
Sure.
So that was kind of an eye opener.
Okay.
And then I learned that you need to be open, honest, and vulnerable.
Cool.
Which was the hardest part.
That's cool.
So I had shops in the Navy, and we literally did things that had never been done before. Mostly because we never thought that anything was impossible, at least until we tried it.
Yeah.
Something's physically impossible, right? I'm never going to be a 6'9", 300-pound defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys. I've given up on that dream. But most times there's a way, right?
Yeah.
And then in my consulting business, it was the same thing. We have to figure out a way to make this work.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if no one else has been able to figure it out before. And sometimes the technology is not available yet, and that's a reason that it can't be done. But I've come up with solutions, when I was programming, that were just brute force, because going back to sometimes failure is not an option. You got to figure out a way. So you figure it out, you brute force it, you make it work, and then later you fix it up to make it elegant and clean. And the teams I work with, they knew that was the goal. And everybody bought in that doesn't matter if no one else could do this, we'll figure it out. Or if we can't figure it out, then there's no way to do it.
Yeah. I love that you included vulnerability in there. I will tell you, one of the hardest parts, right? If it was me, myself, and I, it would be so easy. Well, I shouldn't say so easy. It'd be so much easier, right? It's the management of different personalities. And one of the things that I learned and I instill in our team is that I don't have all the answers. I am only as good. I shouldn't even put I in there. We are only as good as the people we surround ourselves with. Sounds a little cliche, but it's absolutely the truth. I think it's only through that vulnerability, and you know, a lot of our team members, some people behind the scenes that probably you haven't met, but you know, you've interfaced with a lot of people on my team. You know, I am absolutely only as good as the collective brain trust of that team.
Yep.
Right. Social advisors is not Charlie Van Derven, though I do, you know, I'm the face of the operation, I suppose, because I started it. Without everybody else, and I could name them all off, but with, you know, without everybody surrounding me, like, we wouldn't be half of where we are today.
Well, it's totally true. I mean, I part of the business culture was that, this goes back to the consultancy, that if you come up with a great idea, prepare to be challenged,
Yeah, cool.
because everybody's going to challenge your great idea. And the point was, if your great idea can't stand up to scrutiny, then it's probably not really a great idea.
Yeah.
And I included myself in that.
Sure.
I said, if I come up with an idea, pick it apart the
Yes.
same way we do everyone else. Be brutal with me.
Yeah.
Because just because I own the company doesn't mean I can afford to be stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the vulnerability part, that was by far the hardest part. You know.
We all have ego.
Yes.
It's hard. You know, you've got to make the cognitive decision to get out of the way of it, or get your ego out of the way. Right. Until you make that cognitive decision,
it's harder.
It sure is. It sure is.
But we continually challenge each other. Yeah. And it worked because we came up with great solutions.
Yeah. Awesome. I am, you know, it's fun to watch you go through this evolution from independent broker dealer to RIA. Brian, you've had a great journey, man, and I'm excited to watch the rest of that, or, you know, a good portion of the rest of that journey. Is there anything you'd change? Is there anything you'd do differently? You know, I'm thinking more about financial services, because of course that's who we're speaking to, and that's who we want to, you know, instill some wisdom and experience on. But heck, even going back to Navy and IT and jazz DJ, do you like the way it played out, or is there anything you'd change along the way?
Well, you know, there are always things that could be changed along the way. However, all those things, the good ones and the bad ones,
yeah,
they're the reason I'm here right now.
That's right.
You know, there are things I had to go through. There are lessons I had to learn. You know, most of what I learned on leadership was from people that I said I will never treat people like that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I had some. I worked for some really good people, but I learned the most from the ones I thought were idiots.
That might be a quote on my post next week. I'll attribute it to you. I work with some really good people, but I learned the most from the idiots.
Yeah, yeah. because we learn from our mistakes, hopefully, right? Because we're too busy patting ourselves on the back on how great we are with our successes.
Yeah,
we don't really learn a lot from them. You know? So
I mean, those who are watching video can see I'm looking down, because I'm literally jotting that down. That might be my Friday post, Brian.
So I think there are things you need to learn that anthropologists and sociologists, I probably read this 30 years ago, to summarize their thesis was, everybody has to stub their own toe. We don't always learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, we have to make the mistake ourselves. We continually try to touch the pot, even though our parent says it's hot.
Yep.
Until we've touched it, and now we know exactly what hot means.
Yeah.
All
So
right?
true.
I try to avoid that as much as possible. You know, I'm willing to learn from other people's mistakes if I can.
Good.
But sometimes I have to give it my own shot and find out, you know, whether can do it or not. So I have to stub my own toe occasionally also.
Yeah, that's the truth. So Brian, first off, I appreciate our friendship. It's awesome to work with you. You've got a lot of experience inside and outside this industry, and you're going to bring a lot of value to the people listening to our podcast. And, you know, we're going to chop this up into sound bites and use it in a lot of different ways. Are you open to being contacted by our listeners?
Sure.
Okay. I think if, somebody hears something that you say that, they'd love you to elaborate on it, of course, contact you on, obviously LinkedIn is an easy place. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So all my contact info is on LinkedIn. But the easiest email is Brian at charitableplanningnetwork.com.
Cool.
Or you can text me at 360-340-0601.
Cool. And
that's my electronic leash. So.
Yeah. I got one too. Actually, I covered it up and turned it off for our purposes here because last thing I wanted was a vibration or,
Yes, I turned all my devices off. They're all gone.
CharitablePlanningNetwork.com to learn more about your RIA and about you personally.
So one correction. So CharitablePlanningNetwork.com specifically focuses on the charitable planning work.
Okay.
I split off the RIA.
Okay.
So the actual RIA is Planning Network Partners.
PlanningNetworkPartners.com.
So if someone wants information about the RIA,
okay,
and what we focus on specifically, that's PlanningNetworkPartners.com. Charitable Planning Network is kind of the marketing arm for the RIA.
Okay.
Because all my best relationships have come through my marketing on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Wonderful.
With some company, Social Advisors.
Yeah,
I think that's their name.
I swear I did nothing. There's no compensation happening under a table right now. And Brian, you're part of Post Party that we do also.
Yes, 3 times.
Yeah. So Post Party is a cool little piece of software that Brian and I take advantage of a couple times a week. And it really is just out there to get more exposure for the awesome content you create. And so a little, my selfless plug, right? My selfish plug maybe is socialpostparty.com. And you learn all about it there.
So here's a question for you. You might have the answer.
Yeah, man.
A friend of mine sent me a screenshot that she was on LinkedIn and my name popped up. Cool. Brian George shared this.
Good.
So how does that happen?
Well, I won't pretend to know all of the LinkedIn algorithm, though we've got a little bit of intelligence based on some research we do with some other agency partners. LinkedIn, Brian, they want that activity. LinkedIn's got a couple problems, I believe, and we can talk about that real quick, but LinkedIn needs that activity. So just like when you and I need to set calendar appointments, we'll put a simple call to action in front of the networks we grow that says, hey, if you want to spend some time together, LinkedIn's doing the same thing through notifications. Right? So they want that person to interact. The more activity they have with their users, the more time spent with eyeballs on LinkedIn, there's a direct revenue translation, mostly to advertising, right? Which is the reason why we say, hey, share native content, don't share a bunch of links, because LinkedIn doesn't want to drive people away from the platform. In the same right, they want people using the platform more. So they're going to give prompts. And now how that algorithm says this person knows Brian, well, it might be common connections, might be geographic location, probably a combination of a whole bunch of stuff.
And I don't know if it's the first time it happened, but it's the first time someone mentioned it.
Yeah, cool. And I get and in large part to Post Party, my postal trend from time to time, and so I know that showing up in certain notification feeds. Charlie Van Derven's post about this or whatever. So and
so's in the news on LinkedIn, and
whatever that is. So that activity, it's not just the exposure of the content itself. To your point, it's those notifications that are going out to portions of your network. Right. So I'll tell you, man, it's important to continue to build a large network, but I think the greatest opportunity on LinkedIn right now is content. Research we've done says, less than 2% of the network shares content consistently.
Well, I took care of that.
Yeah.
3 times a week. So
yeah, you're doing great. And most of the problem for our industry is most of that content being shared is pre-approved, canned, firm or FMG or Fourfield or, one of these firms that produces, canned content that 20,000 advisors are all sharing.
And I started sharing content on LinkedIn when I was with Edward Jones, because allowed you to do it if you had certain training.
Yeah.
But the most traction I got on LinkedIn was not about investments.
Yeah.
It was the personal stories
Yeah.
that actually touch people, not the business stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think LinkedIn, this comes back to what I was saying a second ago. I think LinkedIn's got a big problem. There's about 850 million users, profiles, let's say. I'm not users, a much smaller percentage of that, a much smaller number than that. The majority of people posting content are yelling tips and tricks into a hallway. Now, I'm guilty of that, right? My post today was about 4-step business development process, and here's the tips within that 4-step. But you're absolutely right. The content that I post that gets the most traction is social content. Now, let's remember, LinkedIn is a social media platform, right? And when you've got a whole bunch of people in a sales or client acquisition role demonstrating their expertise all the time, you get less interaction. People become numb to that type of content. We want to celebrate the people in our network. Your photo today was awesome, right? You playing bass. It tells a story about who you are. And I would argue that's way more important to you doing business with people than your expertise. Of course, your expertise is necessary, but if all you're doing is shouting tips and tricks, you never take the time to build a relationship. Right. And I think that you're spot on. Our research says, and I don't even need to research to know that when we're celebrating somebody for an achievement or, that stuff just goes so much further than 3 ways to do this,
Mm-hmm. Relationships are the key.
The key.
Always have been, always will be.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, probably the best compliment I've ever received in the business. And this is back in like last year at Jones. Yeah. So it's been a while, but a client walked in with her mother and her 2 grown children and said, my mom doesn't like her advisor. I want you to take over her accounts. And my kids have some money and they want to start investing and start IRAs. I want you to take care of their accounts also. Right. And I'm usually pretty stoic, but under the surface, it was pretty emotional.
Yeah.
But because to me, you trust me with your inheritance. You trust me with your mom's life savings and your inheritance.
Yeah.
You already trust me with your kids' inheritance, but now you're entrusting me with your kids' future.
Yeah.
Right. To build wealth for them. And I thanked her. I said, that is the best compliment you could ever give me.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah. So I guess we wrap it up then with knowing, those are just the indicators that you're in the right place, man.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Awesome, Brian. I want to say thank you so much again. And I introduced you in the beginning as the founder of Charitable Planning Network. My apologies, our planning partner. Say it again, Brian.
So I have 2 LLCs. Okay. I'm still the founder and managing member of Charitable Planning Network, but I am also the founder and managing member of Planning Network Partners, which is the RIA.
Okay, Planning Network Partners, and so I wasn't wrong. I just didn't tell the whole story.
Correct. So
okay.
The pedestal I ordered for you, I'm going to send it back now.
Oh no, Brian, it is a pleasure. Oh, every time we get to chat, this is maybe a little more formal, but it feels like it's just one of our other conversations.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah. So, man, I want to thank you for being a friend. I want to thank you for putting your trust in social advisors. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. And being my guest on our podcast today.
As long as you guys continue to make me look good, then I'll be happy. And
you make it easy for us.
Yeah. And we'll get to meet face to face in a couple of months.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to be in Florida. We will. We'll do a terrible job swinging golf clubs together or something.
Oh, there you go. I guarantee I'll do a terrible job of swinging golf course.
Well, maybe dinner is better for us. We're both good at that.
Well, I could heckle you on the golf course. I could do that.
I suffer already. I don't know if I can handle the heckling.
Oh, All right. Take care, Charlie. Thanks
All
again.
right, Brian, thank you so much, man. Appreciate your time.
Yep. Bye-bye.